People who worked in restaurants. What was the worst customer that you had to deal with? I worked in Domino's. I had a guy throw a handful of pennies at me while laughing. The 30-odd cents was my tip. He was mad when I turned around and walked away without picking any of them up. His exact words were, "Oh, my money not good enough for you. Fine. I'll never order Domino's again." I've never had a customer fire themselves like that before. It was great. I used to work in a bar that sold very old booze. A drunk man tried to impress his friends by chugging from a bottle of Mero from the early 60s. He had to pay for the whole thing since his lips touched it and it was useless. Cost him around $800. Barista here had a guy that regularly came in and ordered a complicated drink. He always finished the order by asking for a finger swirl in the drink. If you gave him a confused look, he would say, "Well, how else am I gonna taste you?" He was the worst. Worked in a popular restaurant for a while. We usually have quite a long wait. 30-40 minutes waits during dinner service, and people are told by the hosts about this. There was this lady that got fed up with the wait after 10 minutes. She stormed into the restaurant, stood next to a table of 4 people and literally asked them, "Are you guys done? We've been waiting for a long time now and would like to have the table if you guys are just chatting." Was completely mind blown how people are able to not give a duck and pull something like this in public. This guy threw a beer in my face when I stuck up for myself and told him to stop banging his fist on the bar and screaming, "Yo!" to get my attention. Way back in the 80s, I worked in a restaurant that was a favorite of a celebrity chef of those days, Jeff Smith, the frugal gourmet. Never seen a bigger a shat than that guy. Literally make our servers cry. Nothing was ever right. He was beyond rude and condescending. Yet he kept coming back. He had a reputation of being a jerk-off camera. Eventually he was disgraced by being outed as a child predator and was quickly forgotten by all. Our restaurant was a good place. Another celebrity chef of the time, Graham Kerr, the galloping gourmet, was always a pleasure to have visit. Our bar was having a private party. A drunk dude walks in and orders a drink. I knew he wasn't with the party based on his attire and that he came in every so often. I told him I couldn't get him a drink. He lost his mind, told me to duck off, and then wanted to fight me. On his way out he yelled that we should put up signs. As he walked by the signs on the door saying we were closed for a private event. He came in the next day sober and apologized. Work in a place that is frequented by local families and youth sports teams. On Sundays this one large group of people always come in, and they are the worst. The parents drink and ignore their preteens who run around playing games in the entire restaurant, disrupting everyone else. They have tried to walk in a party of 45 during end of year sports party season, when we are booked solid, and get mad that there isn't enough space for them. And they modify everything like crazy and leave 0 in a tip. It's at least once a month the entire group comes in, and weekly for some of the individual families. Edit. Wow, thanks for the upvotes. Been a rough time. Like unbelievably. And this oddly helped. Also, I'm not a server. I'm a cook who happens to take orders, pour beer, run food, clear tables, and do dishes. But primarily I cook. After a wedding reception ended at our facility we were cleaning, and I began the cleaning process on our espresso machine. The party was over almost a half hour already. The process takes 12 minutes. People were still there as the party slowly let out, and the father of the bride asks me for an espresso. I told him I could get it to him, as we have a strict policy of always trying to satisfy our guests' needs. But the machine was cleaning, and it would be done in about 10 minutes. He begins ranting about how much he paid for the wedding, and stormed to our banquets manager, and told them I refused to make it for him. Manager is at bag and starts ripping me in front of the guy. I show both of them that the machine is just finishing the cleaning process, and it was impossible to make it beforehand. I got suspended for 2 weeks. A lady from the real estate agency next door ordered a chicken box, and then proceeded to drive an hour to her next showing. In the middle of summer. where it probably say right in front of her AC unit in the passenger seat. Surprise. Surprise. Food gets cold when left in the cold. Who knew? Upon the shocking discovery that food doesn't stay warm, she called us to scream at my boss that we tried to kill her. Because he's a spineless pushover in the summer, he agreed to give her a new free meal when she came back. She came to get her free food, and things didn't improve. One of our chefs came to collect her cold food while still in front of the window. He opened the box and fished out the uneaten biscuit. He threw the rest away, but walked away with the bread. I presume he meant to eat it, but he went about it all wrong. She started screaming about how we were recycling food, that she was good friends with the health inspector, that she was going to see us in court. The histrionics brought my boss out of his office, and after chewing out the idiot chef, he tried to smooth things over. I don't remember much. We were all busy, and since he'd taken over the drive through, I hopped onto another task. She wouldn't move forward, and the line was piling up. My boss was starting to get annoyed. They had stopped talking to each other. Her hot, fresh meal is up, and he goes to hand deliver it and tell her to get the duck out of line. I'm not entirely sure, as I was halfway across the store trying to make drinks. All I remember is a surprised gasp from our food runner, and looking up to see a box of steaming hot chicken came sailing through the window and scatter across the front of the house. My boss had barely stepped back in time. We could only stare as the crazy lady roared out of the parking lot, and he snapped at the first person stupid enough to still be making eye contact to clean it up. Bartending in a restaurant a few years ago, there was a private party, and one of the guests asked me to plug in his iPhone to listen to a song. No big deal. I did it, and he tipped me 20. He left his phone behind the bar and got wasted. When he was leaving I said, "Sir, don't forget about your phone." He threw a beer on me, and told me to leave him the duck alone, and told me get a real job. Guess who got to keep a nice new iPhone? I had a guy that was a germaphobe and had really bad OCD. He came through before, and my coworker didn't want to deal with him. So I went to the drive-through window after washing my hands. I cashed out the order that was on screen and he reluctantly handed over his card. I gave him the coffee that I cashed him out for. He started yelling at me saying that it was wrong. Apparently the person that took the order forgot to type it in. Unfortunate, but it happens. He started yelling at the coworker that didn't want to take his order at the window. So instead of just saying that it was the wrong order, getting refunded and being on his way, he stayed in the driveway for 20 minutes telling my coworker that she was stupid and unprofessional and was unfit to be a supervisor. He kept demanding that we get the phone number of our franchise owner, but apparently the number was wrong, and he kept yelling at us. But when we came back to the window after 20 minutes of this, he left. My supervisor went into the back to cry. I felt so bad for her. She's the sweet person. Fast forward less than a month later, he called the store to apologize, and the manager made sure that my coworker never dealt with him again, but he could come in as long as he didn't make a scene. He told the manager that his therapist told him he should apologize. He spent a combined total of 3 hours on the phone with the manager, where he apologized and also blamed us for making him late to his appointment that day, and at the end of the phone call, he asked if we were hiring. Fast food near a high school. The absolute worst were the moms. Had one who came in weekly and screamed about wrong orders or whatever complaint she could dream up, so she could get free food for her entire family. Then you get the loser douches who think harassing employees is funny. The absolute worst customer was the owner of the franchise. He'd walk in, test employees and then fire someone for some issue so minor it was likely just made up. I worked at a bakery for 2 years, and I had to deal with honestly the most innocent rude customers ever. I've worked in the food service industry my whole life, and lived in Toronto up until 3 years ago, and I have never dealt with such entitlement. Anyways, one day one of our staff members quit by text message 5 minutes before her shift, and 30 minutes before we were set to open at 8 AM on a Saturday. We were hard pressed finding someone to cover, so I was alone until a front of house person was able to come in. About an hour later, I had one of the kitchen staff helping me, and all they could do was grab things and bag them as they weren't trained on cash or coffee. So here I'm running around trying to help customers, make coffees, ring people through, and clearly stressed. This douchebag man was clearly annoyed that he had to wait, huffing and puffing, and eventually loudly exclaimed, "Duck this. I'm not ducking waiting for this crap," and proceeded to throw his bagged muffin at my head and storm out. I legit almost chased him down. I was livid. Customers are crap lol. Had a man and his wife come in during a really busy lunch rush. He was rude off the bat, interrupting me, not wanting to listen to me speak. Whatever. It happens all the time. He was very adamant that he wanted both chips and salsa and a plate of roasted wings as appetizers. He kept emphasizing that he wanted them together before they ordered their lunch, even though chips and salsa only take a minute and wings take about 12. I rang them in together because of how he ordered them. In hindsight, I should have made completely sure. But, not 3 minutes later, the man is waving at my coworker across the restaurant, yelling at her about how they've been there for 30 minutes and his appetizer is taking too long, and he wants it before his wings. I was at a party table, so she ran back and grabbed the chips and the wings, which were somehow up as well, and brought them out. He took one bite of the wing and tossed the plate like a frisbee across the table towards her and started complaining about them being cold. I rush over to see what's going on, and he starts yelling at me, saying his food is awful and this is the worst service he's ever gotten in his life. I don't do well with grown men yelling at me, so I went to the kitchen and my manager went out and thankfully had my back as much as he could, and made the guy pay for the wings and the chips and then leave. After he left, I started to clean the table, where I found the single penny he tipped me with, that my coworker promptly threw in the trash, and got a call from my general manager asking why a man had called me professionally challenged on Yelp. I used to manage a restaurant and hated those couple of times in 5 years of my working there when some entitled customers left without paying because the waitresses didn't come to pick up my money. That's a piece of crap move and a poor excuse when all you need is to grab a waitress's attention by simply talking. Once it was a family of 4 who left the restaurant during a busy evening and we realized that the bill wasn't paid after some 10 minutes had passed. I checked the cameras and saw the father taking the bill, putting the money in, sitting there for just 3-4 minutes, looking around and taking the money back and leaving with the whole family. Lucky our owner was a great guy and told me to simply ban the ducker and his family, and to my surprise, that piece of crap came back with friends on a busy evening in a couple of months. I was very excited watching his face being embarrassed in front of his friends and customers sitting outside when I told him that he is banned, and when his wife started to get upset I told them I remembered them, and told them the whole story with me checking the cameras and seeing him taking the money back and all. A customer ordered one of our daily specials and didn't like it. So instead of complaining to me about the food and letting me offer something else, she complained to my manager about me. This was May of last year. In August of last year, turns out she was one of my college professors for the semester, teaching a management course. She recognized me the first day, but I played it off like I didn't know her. Edit. She did not complain about me to my manager in front of me. I left to go work an event in a different building, and she left a sticky note for me after talking to my boss. I don't know what the sticky note said, since I didn't bother to read it. Any table that mentioned the tip at all. Don't worry, we tip well. If you do X, we'll tip big. We'll take care of you. Holding the tip over my head doesn't get you better service. You get the same everyone else does. They were always pretentious and rude, and never tipped well. I worked at a Vietnamese restaurant back in high school, and I had a Viet family come in to eat. They gave me snobby vibe the entire time, especially after I told them I couldn't speak Vietnamese. They ordered regular pho, but asked for no cilantro. So I rang the order in with no cilantro. It came out with cilantro in it, and I told the kitchen what the family asked. The kitchen told me they couldn't do anything about it. So I told my manager, and they told me to ask the family if they still wanted it. Family said yes, so I brought it out, and they took out the cilantro, and ate the entire thing. At the end of the meal they spoke to the owner, and complained how I got their order completely wrong, got the food for free, and got their bill taken out of my pay. The owner told me I should remove the cilantro myself. Shitty management. Crafty customer Reddit. I was not angry that the customer ordered no cilantro. I was upset at the fact that they abused their rights by asking not to pay for their food when they clearly ate everything. Also, it's been a few years, haha. My friend works at restaurant. A vlogger was shooting a video, and since it was allowed within the place nobody troubled her. Apparently she wanted one of those gone sexual clickbait thumbnails. So she asked my friend to place his face in her breast while she squirted ketchup on herself. My friend refused as he was in a relationship, but some other employee agreed to do so. After they shot the thumbnail, she marched in the next day claiming sexual assault. I don't know what happened after that, but it did not turn out good for the liar. This old guy who asked if I was included in the order. I'm 17. I waited tables for a few years in college, and the worst table that I ever had was a Catholic priest and some guy he was trying to hit up for donations. The whole meal he was very condescending and demanding. After everything was done, I left the check at the table. He ended up walking out stiffing me, not just on the tip, but on the entire check. He even stole the leather check holder thing. I reported this to my manager. A couple weeks later, this same guy comes in with about 20 members of his congregation. My manager told him he wasn't welcome in our restaurant after walking out on his previous tab in front of his whole party. They all ended up leaving to go elsewhere. Best manager I've ever had. Worked fast food in high school. I've got a few. 1. Man orders double cheeseburger with extra cheese and receives one with 4 slices instead of the usual 2. 2 minutes later, he is absolutely red in the face and screaming at the poor cashier. He's demanding to talk to the little crap that made his sandwich and asking if we think this is some kind of joke. Apparently, when he ordered extra cheese he wanted 1 extra slice, not 2. 2. Some guy comes to the drive-thru and orders 4 fish sandwiches. We only had 2 pieces of fish cooked, and they were really close to their whole expiration time. Since we had to cook more anyway, my manager said to waste those 2, since they were old, and make all fresh ones for the customer. Guy comes up to the window and they ask him to pull forward, because it'll be a couple minutes. Meanwhile, we keep serving other cars. After a couple orders go out, this dude is in the lobby and asking for a manager. He is irate that we made him wait on his food while serving other people. The manager apologizes and explains the situation. Most people would be thrilled we didn't serve them old food, but for some reason, that just made this guy angrier. He starts yelling louder, and then threatens my manager with physical violence over it. She asks him to leave, and threatens to call the police. Dude storms out, slamming the door so hard he broke the latch, and squeals his tires as he leaves the parking lot, without his order. Never came back for it, either. 3. We had this regular who came in every Sunday morning, and ordered the same thing. A side salad, supersize fries, and a Happy Meal for her grandkid. One day, the person who bagged her order put the salad and the fries in the same bag as we were trained to do. If you've never seen a supersize fry container, they're tall, and the side salad is in one of those little rectangular plastic things. So as you can imagine, the fries fell over. For a normal person this is no big deal. But not for this lady. She needed new fries and a new salad, in separate bags this time. Of course the fries we had already made that came up 1 minute ago were not good enough, and she refused to leave or accept the new ones, until we made a fresh basket. Pizza. Ice cream. Sandwich shop in a small rural town. I was on delivery. We had this guy who ordered maybe once a week or so. This customer lived a solid half an hour outside town. None of us knew why the owner ever agreed to deliver to this guy in the first place, being that far out. But we used to wonder if the owner was being threatened into it. The level of crap the customer would raise if you didn't bring him cheese and peppers for his pizza was absolute madness. There was an incident where a delivery driver found the customer waiting on his porch polishing a shotgun, and the first thing the customer did was loosely point the gun towards the driver and say, "Did you bring my cheese and peppers?" We fully believe a customer would have shot our driver if the answer had been no. As it was, the driver didn't have as much cheese and peppers as the customer would have liked. Customer called the restaurant. Threw a fit. From then on, when we delivered to this customer, *BECAUSE the owner didn't cut him off. We were told to take a bucket of cheese and peppers with us. I'm talking like one of those bulk ice cream buckets you buy at the supermarket. We all kept on in our trucks, but we had to start taking an extra, just for this one customer. I wonder if the guy was even in it for the pizza. Used to be a bartender at this hybrid restaurant. Bar. Movie theater. On big movie releases, the bar would get absolutely slammed, and on this particular night we had run out of glassware completely. People were allowed to take their drinks into the theater with them. The only glassware I had at the time were regular pint glasses that you would normally serve water in. We only served beer in them in a pinch. This guy and his wife, GF, got lucky and caught a seat at the bar, and he ordered a Jack Daniel's neat. Having no other glassware, I put it in a pint glass and explained that we were running low on rocks glasses, assuming he would understand, since it was absolute chaos everywhere you looked. He took it and said, "I'm not very happy," in a smarmy way, and gave this crafty little grin. I apologized again and said, "Unfortunately we are not making any more glasses back here," and him and his wife acted like I reached across the bar and slapped him. I just got my manager and told him to deal with them. He told them the same thing I had told them regarding the lack of glassware, and gave them a free drink, which they seemed happy with. I would felt bad if there was something else I could have done for them, but there wasn't. So duck that guy. Oh, where to start? I worked in a cafe for a few years, and while there were some bad one-offs, the worst people were difficult regulars. There was one who would order the most popular thing on the menu, but with a list of modifications a mile long. Right down to what fruit to include with the side of fruit, and how many inches tall to pile the turkey on the sandwich. She would always get it to go, and then would about 50 of the time call the restaurant from home saying that the order wasn't correct and that she wanted a refund. However, my least favorite was this woman who would come in about an hour before closing and then stay until past closing, bugging you for little things piecemeal all the while. I get that at sit-down restaurants, customers can generally come in whenever they want, as long as the doors aren't locked yet, and then stay as long as they want. However, we were a small cafe, and I would kick everyone out when I locked the doors. She just wouldn't leave. Once she was on the phone when it was time for her to leave, lol. I ended up just shouting at her, loud enough for whoever was on the other line to hear. "It is time to leave the cafe now." People not wanting to leave was relatively common, although most people would leave right away when you asked. Once a woman just wanted to finish up one more thing on her computer. One more thing turned into one more thing, which turned into one more thing. She was sitting by the open window, and there was no air conditioning in the cafe. So, finally I just went and closed the window. She gave me the dirtiest look, but she got the duck out, lol. The first customer I described was my coworker's worst nightmare, and he always made me deal with her since. While she was super annoying, I didn't mind as much. The people who wouldn't leave at the end of the day pissed me off so badly though. I will never forget the time when our customers rioted cause we ran out of ketchup. I was there thinking, is this the peak of my US experience? I had a customer randomly ask if we spoke English, as I was talking to them in English. Removed. One dude would come into the cafe with his two crafty dogs that would hop on everything and bark at people. Even if there was a line, he'd just raise his hand and yell coffee, and just walk past the line and wait for his coffee, where he'd pay cash at the pick up area. One day, after he skipped a particularly long line, I refused to make his coffee. He started shouting at me and saying he'd get me fired. But eventually he went to the end of the line, and he had to order his coffee from me. Nobody clapped, but I felt like the people in line were clapping in their hearts. This one guy who basically hated his order so much that he waved me over and told me to put my hand out and proceeded to spit out entirely what was in his mouth into my hand. Then tell me to refund him and then make him something else. Edit. Holy guacamole. This comment blew up more than I thought. Thank you for the cake day comments and all around comments alone. And the awards. Much appreciated, fellow Redditors. I'd like to point out that I was too shocked to really retaliate to what he did at that moment. That I don't like confrontation, so I walked away to the bathroom and cleaned my hands for what felt like hours. My co-worker saw what happened and told my boss, who kicked him out, and he was no longer allowed back. Anyways, have a great day. I have two from the same restaurant. First one goes like this. I worked as a busboy, and it was getting near closing time. At this point it was around 9:30. We closed at 10. And this table, who was probably 20-ish feet away from where I was, started trying to say to me, "That's a free meal." I stopped vacuuming because I just didn't understand what they were asking me. Supposedly they were under the belief that if someone was vacuuming before close then they got a free meal. So eventually the owner comes up to me and asks me how far away I was vacuuming, and I said the same thing. She just told me, "Yeah, they are idiots," and told me to wait a little bit. They ended up leaving past 10:30 and I don't think they left a tip. They didn't get their free meal. Another shorter story was the time that two giant groups of about 16 people each came in a few weeks later at about 9:45. I think I got home at midnight that night. One time a guy stared at my chest as I explained the specials, and then asked me about the specials. His girlfriend didn't speak to me for the rest of their meal. He gave me a 10 tip. I worked in a beach town in NJ for a while, and New York tourists were the worst. It was the act that they were doing everybody a favor by being there. This was a rich beach town, not one that relied on tourism at all. In fact, these arrogant tourists probably brought the average income down, and definitely brought the average tips down. And anybody who snapped their fingers, I preferred "Hey, you" to finger snapping. Back in college I was working my first job as a front of house staff for an on-campus locally owned burger place. My main job was to call the order numbers out to customers and pass their food off. Easy enough. Well, one night we get absolutely slammed with to-go orders at close. I'm the only person out at the front and there were two cooks behind me working on the food. A man ordered 2 burgers. Cool. Well, we are so busy I'm obviously not aware of what number goes with what customer off the top of my head. And I call out a number. A customer takes it and heads out. Turns out the wrong customer grabbed that man's order. He proceeded to yell profanities at me, calling me a ducking idiot, demanding his food be free and that he gets free fries, all in front of other customers. I started crying. It held up everyone else's food in the process. The manager has to tell him to duck off and remakes his food. It was just one giant crap show. I worked at a sit-down artisan pizza place in a nice neighborhood for a while. One time I saw a customer scream at and belittle one of the waitresses so much she cried, "You're an idiot. How hard could your pathetic job be?" type stuff. He was mad that there were not more pepperoni slices on his pizza. He also did this with his wife and 2 kids at the table for context. Had some racist lady ask my Guatemalan co-worker a nonsensical question. Think something along the lines of "which steaks are vegan?" about the menu several times. And when given the answer would repeat the question at louder and louder increments until she screamed at me, "Open kitchen. I'm white. Excuse me, sir. Sir." Insert question asterisk she didn't like it when I gave her the same answer because her question made no sense. She just assumed my co-worker couldn't understand because she had an accent. In reality, this co-worker, while she has an accent, speaks Spanish, English and Arabic, which to my estimation is 200 more languages than this idiot speaks. I had a customer order the crab crusted salmon. After about 30 minutes I brought out the food and the customer then decided to tell me that they couldn't eat it as they were allergic to crab and that they didn't read what the meal was. Both my manager and the chef were pretty pissed, cause the customer then didn't want to pay for the meal.